The government shutdown isn't just about gridlock down on Capitol Hill. It's actually, right now, grounding your next flight. And the finger pointing, well, it reveals a pretty disturbing political strategy that's putting safety way down the list.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really digging into a pile of sources that detail the immediate, pretty chaotic impact of this government shutdown. It's day 24 now, as of October 24th. And our sources are showing this isn't, just about abstract budget fights. This is a genuine safety crisis unfolding in our airspace as we speak.
Yeah, that's right. Our mission today is really clear. We need to understand why essential federal workers, especially the ones keeping our air travel safe, are being forced to work without pay. And also how congressional maneuvering, frankly, has turned their paychecks into, well, political weapons. The early numbers are already staggering. Just on the economic front, the travel industry alone, looking at an estimated loss of about $3.3 billion already. But wow, the really alarming cost isn't just the dollars, is it? It's the hit to public safety. Our sources show, before this shutdown started, maybe 5% of flight delays were because of air traffic control staffing shortages. Pretty low now. That number has just exploded. We're talking 53%. 53%.
It's a massive jump. And you're seeing controllers described as stressed out and fatigued. That exhaustion is directly forcing major ground stops. We're talking big airports like Newark, LaGuardia in New York.
Yeah, critical hubs.
Exactly. And here's the core issue that forms the conservative framing in a lot of our source material. This crisis is getting worse because the Senate actually failed to pass a pretty straightforward bill. It would have paid these essential workers immediately. But Democrats blocked that targeted measure.
So the strategic question that comes up is, why? Why are some lawmakers apparently prioritizing, political leverage, pushing for broader policy wins over giving immediate relief to the folks, the military, the controllers working on the front lines without a paycheck? Okay, let's really unpack the crisis itself then. The chaos we're seeing in the skies, it's tied directly to this pay crisis and the frankly, dangerous levels of exhaustion it's causing. That jump, 5% to 53% of delays blamed on controller staffing. That's not just a number. That's physical evidence of a critical system buckling under pressure.
And what's really driving that, it's not just anger, though I'm sure that's part of it. It's sheer fatigue, bone-deep exhaustion. We have to remember, because of existing staff shortages, these controllers were already working brutal schedules before any shutdown.
What kind of schedules are we talking about?
Think 10-hour shifts, 6 days a week, often with only maybe 4 scheduled days off per month. That's the baseline.
Wow, okay. And now they're facing zero paychecks. The first full $0 paycheck is expected, next Tuesday, October 28th?
That's the date looming. And the fatigue, it just morphs into a public safety hazard. I mean, put yourself in their shoes. These are highly skilled professionals. They're spending their incredibly rare days off driving for Uber, or maybe Uber Eats, Instacart, just trying to make ends meet.
Just to cover the mortgage or buy groceries.
Exactly. They're essentially trading desperately needed rest for, gig work just to stay afloat.
And they're warning us, right? The controllers themselves have said the number of sick calls driven by this exhaustion and financial stress, quote, will only get bigger.
And we're seeing the direct results already. Major hubs, like you mentioned, Newark, LaGuardia, Houston's Bush Airport, they're experiencing rolling ground delays, even ground stops. The system is cracking.
Yeah, and the Transportation Secretary, Sean Duffy, he basically admitted how serious it is. He said publicly he could not guarantee flights would be on time. He stressed that the entire system is relying solely on controllers, quote, coming into work every single day.
When the government itself says it's relying entirely on the goodwill and, frankly, the sheer willpower of unpaid workers to maintain basic safety, well, that's the definition of a crisis.
It really is. Which brings us right back to Capitol Hill, because attempts were made, right? Attempts to solve this specific safety issue. But they failed because of politics.
Yeah, that's what's so, fascinating, maybe disturbing is a better word. Immediate, targeted financial relief was proposed, specifically for these essential folks keeping things running, and it failed. It failed because of a tactical, highly partisan standoff, which, again, begs that strategic question.
Was allowing this immediate suffering, the hardship for these working federal employees, seen as a necessary cost to gain leverage for, bigger political goals?
Let's break down what was actually proposed. On the Republican side, they put forward what our sources call the Shutdown Fairness Act. Let's call it the targeted GOP pay bill.
Okay, and that was pretty straightforward.
Very. It aimed to immediately get funds flowing, but only to pay the accepted essential workers.
Right, let's clarify that term accepted. That means the people like the air traffic controllers, military, TSA agents, they're legally required to show up for work during a shutdown.
Exactly. They have to work, but they don't get paid until the whole shutdown ends and funding is restored. That's roughly 1 million people.
Okay, and distinct from furloughed workers who are sent home.
Right. Furloughed workers stay home. So the argument from proponents of this targeted GOP bill, folks like Senator Ron Johnson, was basically logic and priority. They said, look, the furloughed workers, they're already guaranteed by law to get back pay eventually. That's the Government Employee Fair Treatment Act of 2019.
Signed by President Trump, yeah.
Right. So Johnson argued the ethical and practical priority has to be the 1 million people currently working for free right now, especially those in critical safety roles.
Makes sense on the surface, but it failed.
It failed. The vote was 54 to 45 in the Senate. It needed 60 votes to overcome the filibuster.
And the blockage came from
Democratic opposition. They argued the GOP bill was, quote, overly selective and incomplete.
Okay, selective and incomplete. What was their reasoning?
Well, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, he called it a ruse. He argued it would give the president too much power to, quote, pick winners and losers, basically deciding who gets paid during a crisis, which could be politicized.
So they blocked the targeted bill. Did they have their own proposal?
They did. They put forward a countermeasure, the True Shutdown Fairness Act. Let's call it the Comprehensive Democratic Protection Act.
And that was broader.
Much broader. It demanded way more than just paying controllers. It required resuming pay during the shutdown for all federal employees, so both the accepted and the furloughed. And it didn't stop there. It also extended relief to federal contractors.
Okay, so contractors too, that's a big expansion.
Huge. And crucially, their bill also included language to prohibit the administration from issuing formal layoffs, what are called reductions in force, or RIFs.
RIFs, that's not just a budget cut, that's actually terminating civil servant jobs, right?
Exactly. It's the formal layoff process.
Yeah.
So this is where that conservative strategic critique, which is really prominent in our source material, comes into sharp focus. Senator Johnson explicitly argued that by holding up the pay for working controllers, tying it to demands for contractor pay, and this RIF prohibition, Democrats were effectively, quote, continuing the Schumer shutdown.
Right. So the interpretation there is that Democrats were using the immediate crisis, the controllers' pay, as leverage. Leverage to pressure the administration on completely separate issues like contractor pay and preventing any potential layoffs down the line.
That's the core of the argument, the calculation being raise the political pain of the shutdown even if it means delaying pay for controllers and impacting safety in order to secure these much broader concessions.
Now, let me just push back slightly on that framing, playing devil's advocate based on what you said Schumer argued. Couldn't the Democratic viewpoint be that passing only the targeted pay bill for controllers actually relieves the pressure?
How so?
Well, if you pay the most visible, safety-critical group, doesn't that reduce the urgency for the president and the majority to negotiate an end to the entire shutdown for everyone else, including the furloughed workers?
That is absolutely the counter-argument you hear, that the targeted bill, while maybe solving the immediate controller issue, lets the administration off the hook politically for the broader shutdown impact.
So it's a fundamental disagreement on strategy, the GOP bill. Targeted, temporary, focused on the immediate safety risks.
Right. While the Democratic bill expanded the scope dramatically, it turned a specific safety relief measure into really a comprehensive leverage point covering much wider policy disagreements, some totally unrelated to the current funding fight.
Okay, and speaking of relief and pressure, here's where things get even messier, isn't it? The administration itself seems to be adding a whole new layer of uncertainty. It's not just that essential workers aren't getting paid now. Suddenly, the promise of getting paid later, the back pay, is being questioned.
Yeah, this is a really concerning development outlined in the sources. Legally, things should be crystal clear. That 2019 law we mentioned, the Government Employee Fair Treatment Act, signed by then-President Trump, it explicitly guarantees back pay for all affected federal employees once funding is back on. Full stop.
Should be ironclad. Workers should be able to count on that, right? To maybe take out short-term loans, plan finances.
Absolutely. It's supposed to provide that assurance. But now, the Office of Management and Budget, the OMB, has put out a memorandum. And this memo suggests, or seems to imply, that maybe furloughed federal employees aren't guaranteed back pay after all, which appears to directly contradict the 2019 law.
Whoa, okay, so OMB is questioning a law signed by the previous president of the same party. How are they justifying that?
That's what lawmakers are demanding to know. They're calling it a novel position, basically, a brand new legal interpretation that seems to have come out of nowhere. They're urgently asking for the full legal reasoning behind this sudden potential reversal.
You can just imagine the impact. This must inflict, as the sources say, needless uncertainty and hardship on people already struggling.
Completely. Public servants who are relying on that 2019 guarantee.
Yeah.
Suddenly the rug feels like it's being pulled out from under them. They feel, and you can understand why, that they're being used in a political tug of war. The administration might be creating this fear, this ambiguity about guaranteed back pay, possibly to, sway public opinion, increase pressure somehow. It's unclear, but it's adding stress.
And then there's the other threat we touched on, the RAF scare, the threat of actual job losses.
Right. The administration reportedly instructed agencies to start considering notifying employees about a reduction in force is that formal layoff process, specifically if their work was currently unfunded or seemed inconsistent with the president's priorities.
So not only are you working without pay or furloughed without certainty of back pay, but now your actual job might be on the chopping block because of this political fight.
Exactly. It compounds the stress enormously. And this RIF's threat was in fact a major reason Democrats insisted on adding that RIF prohibition language into their big counterproposal bill.
So it all connects. This shows how deep this budget fight goes, doesn't it? It's not just about spending levels for the next year.
Not at all. It's getting into fundamental disputes over presidential power, the interpretation of laws meant to protect federal workers, and whether the civil service itself can be used as a political tool during these shutdowns.
Okay, let's try to tie this all together. When we zoom out, what's the bigger picture here?
Well, the immediate economic hit is huge. We mentioned the $3.3 billion loss for travel, but some estimates put the overall economic drag at maybe $1 billion per week just from travel-related impacts alone. That's significant. And crucially, the attempts to provide some relief, specifically paying the essential workers like controllers, they failed not because the money wasn't there. They failed because of a tactical political debate over who should get paid first and whether giving targeted relief would somehow give the president too much political breathing room, reducing the pressure to end the whole shutdown.
So boiling it down, what does this all really tell us? The refusal, particularly from the Democratic side in the Senate, to pass even that targeted bill to pay the people forced to work, people like air traffic controllers risking public safety, it really highlights just how entrenched this deadlock is, how high the stakes have become in this budget fight.
Absolutely. Safety, people's livelihoods, the wider economy, they're all bearing the consequences of what appears to be a strategic political calculation aimed at winning broader policy fights.
So you've heard how this lack of funding is directly hitting flight schedules, hitting the economy, and stressing out critical workers. Here's something to think about. Is Congress, politically speaking, more motivated to end a shutdown when the people suffering the most are those who are furloughed, sent home, but legally guaranteed back pay eventually? Or is the pressure greater when the suffering falls on the working essential employees, like the controllers, who face the immediate double whammy of unpaid labor and a direct risk to public safety? Which group's hardship, the furloughed majority or the working essential minority, ultimately carries more weight in breaking this kind of political impasse? What factor finally forces their hand?